Coming up on the live and interactive ACSA legislative lunch break, Edgar and I will get you all of your latest news and information from the state capitol and CDE with an in-depth analysis on how it impacts you. Plus, the governor has finished signing off on bills from this latest legislative session. We'll talk to our experts in the field about what he signed and what didn't make it to his desk.
The ACSA legislative lunch break starts now.
And it's a couple of minutes after 1 o'clock. We welcome you on a Wednesday to the live and interactive ACSA legislative lunch break, along with Dr. Edgar Zazueta, ACSA's Executive Director. I'm Naj Khan, ACSA Senior Director of Marketing and Communications. Welcome. We are honored to have you today. Go ahead and jump into the chat, say hello, and let us know where you're watching from today. No, this is not some strange avatar that is sitting to the right of me. That is really Edgar. Edgar, you are back today.
I'm actually here. Naj, I keep getting nervous. You know how we do our promotion and we put on social media who our guest is, and it has our both boxes. I'm not gonna lie. Over the last couple of weeks, I kept looking at that when it came on my email or saw it in my feed, and I looked to see if it was still my face. I was wondering if I was gonna get replaced, given that my attendance has been a little bit spotty here on our legislative lunch break. But today I am here in Sacramento. I was telling Michael, one of our producers here, like, we're gonna have to figure this out. We've advanced on so many things. I think we're gonna have to figure out how to get me connected even when we're on the road, right? I know we've done the show from conference rooms, from corners. So I think I think I was motivated here this week that we'll figure out the Wi-Fi situation. Maybe Southwest will let me telecast there from the plane, but I don't know how they're gonna feel about that. But
that would be
we're gonna make the effort.
Look, that would be the greatest one, is if you did the broadcast from a Southwest Airlines plane. It's almost like, can we just make that happen? Just for the sheer
I'm on those planes so much, you think they do me a solid, right? Just let me stay on the Wi-Fi there.
Look, if it makes you feel any better, and you weren't here, but we had Megan on the show a few weeks ago. She was co-hosting with me, and some joke led Neri, one of our loyal viewers, a member of our family, to put on there, hey, maybe it should be Edgar and Megan doing the show. So at least Neri's thinking about how maybe I just drop off the face of the planet here, and how maybe it should just be
apparently Neri's picking favorites there. So all right, I don't hate that.
Yeah, I figured. Well, folks, we are going to talk about the legislative session coming up in a couple of moments. Iván Carrillo and Dorothy Johnson will be here to talk about what the governor has signed, what the governor did not sign, what didn't make it to his desk. We'll talk about Proposition 2 and what comes next, because just because this legislative cycle ends, Edgar, as you know, doesn't mean that we get like this reprieve. We just go from one to the other. So we'll talk to both of them about that. A couple of news stories for you, Edgar, and want to get your thoughts on this. First off, this is a story that's in Cal Matters that we think, if you have the opportunity to, you should take a look at this. And we'll go ahead and put the link into the chat. We've talked about Prop 2, that statewide bond in November. The story in Cal Matters, according to data from a report last year by researchers at UC Berkeley and Stanford, between 15 and 20% of California's K through 12 schools don't have a functioning HVAC system, and another 10% of schools need major repairs. And here's one other data point, Edgar, which actually it kind of shocked me. 41% of school districts nationally need to update or replace their heating, AC, or vent systems in at least half of their schools. Now, this is a national problem, as we just mentioned, data-wise. School officials in California, according to the article, say they need billions of dollars to repair or replace their HVAC systems. Obviously, a big hill to climb with so much happening with climate control and raising temperatures. The $10 billion infrastructure bond that goes on the ballot, or is on the ballot for November. That money, parts of it earmarked for repairs and upgrades. So, I mean, Edgar, we've done shows here on Proposition 2. Here's the data about the need for repairs and upgrades for these HVAC systems. In this article, and again, we encourage you to read this article, and again, we'll put that link in there. They give some real life stories about what's happening during some of the hottest times of the year for students. It really brings a lens to Proposition 2 and why it's so important.
I mean, it's fitting, I guess, in a bad way that we're talking about this here in Sacramento. I think we're going to be 103 degrees here today, right? And we used to talk about this, that as schools have gone in, starting earlier in the summer. And I think the majority of our schools are now starting in August and earlier there in the summer. And we know what the temperature is like. And here we're, by all accounts, we're supposed to be in the fall. But dealing with this weather, and it's ironic, you know, here we're sitting in the ACSA offices and our HVAC system is not working. Iván just talked about this before. It's not working here, right? And so we're quick, like, oh, it's warm, right? We were complaining about having to wear a jacket here as we're going to do the show, but it puts it in perspective that, like, there's people who have to go do work in this way, right? There's, and Iván pointed this out, and there's kids who have to go and learn in this environment. We all know to sit there in an environment where you don't have your focus because you're uncomfortable. You're worried about, you know, how hot it is. Kids are it's getting them sleepy. It's not ideal for learning environments. I mean, this is the reason we're so big on school facilities, right? It's about having nice things for our community, but it goes beyond that there's a direct correlation into that learning environment and academic achievement. So it's one of the reasons, I mean, we go on and on why we're so big on Prop 2, why we're, you know, helping lead this coalition, why we're pushing, we're doing everything in our power to get this. And this is not going to be a panacea, but I think on some of these pieces related to infrastructure, to all aspects of school facilities, this is an important one that and then to mention the added piece about climate change and what's happening across our state and our country, it makes this problem probably even worse.
And folks, if you see Edgar's choppy connection there, we will blame the HVAC system here in the
that, or my internet doesn't remember how to work for legislative lunch breaks.
That might be it too. That might be it too. Hey, this is a really interesting story. This is a list compiled by Niche, which is the ranking and review website on the best schools in California. And the list was based on data from several sources, including the U.S. Department of Education, the U.S. Census Bureau, as well as factors including academics, diversity, teachers, and college preparation. And let me make note of this. I didn't manipulate this story in any way. But our current ACSA past president, Parveen Ahmadi, the superintendent in Castro Valley Unified, clearly her leadership is working. I don't know if Parveen is watching today. Castro Valley Virtual Academy is ranked as the top elementary school in the state and the second best public middle school in the state behind the Girls Academic Leadership Academy in Los Angeles. We went ahead and put that link in the chat. So if you have the opportunity to go ahead.
I'm sure our members, if they like where they ranked on the list, they'll celebrate this. If they don't, they'll just throw this aside. And it was probably, you know, like I asked when you brought me this list, I was like, this is not a Yelp review or anything, right? Like this is legitimate. These are legitimate rankings. But yeah, no, I mean, I think anything that we put out there to just try to quantify how our schools are doing. I know the whole issue of school rankings is somewhat controversial, but I think the one thing we can all agree on is when we see some of our members, some of our leaders being highlighted for some of the work, I think that it does beg the question, hey, you know, let's give this a look. What's happening here in this community that's allowing them to achieve those things.
Yeah, and Parveen, if you're watching, don't be afraid to take a victory lap over this one. A couple of schools right there at the top, so very nice. I just want to make mention, Jason Engel was the first one on our chat today. Dana Carter, Neri, who we've talked about already, and Gloria McInerney. Thank you guys so much for joining us as well. as all of you. Okay, end of the legislative session. Lots to talk about, Edgar. So we've got two experts in the field who spent a lot of time over at the state capitol. Iván Carrillo is ACSA's Senior Director of Policy and Governmental Relations. Looks like he got himself a new headshot right there, Edgar.
Look at that.
Looks good. And Dorothy Johnson, ACSA Legislative Advocate. Iván and Dorothy, so good to have you both.
I'm assuming it's because of all the publicity that he's doing for his new fancy podcast. That's why I figured he went and got some new pictures there.
For something that is an audio only broadcast, for him to go get new headshots done, it makes it kind of unique. By the way, there's a little promotion right there. We'll talk about that in a second, but if you want to listen to Behind the Bills, it is a great broadcast. Iván, with his spiffy new headshots, gets to hosts that. Dorothy, let's start with you. This is the 2-year legislative session. It didn't just happen over 6 months or so. The deadline for the governor to act on legislation has passed. Before we talk about what did pass, let's talk about what didn't pass.
Yeah, great to see you all. Great to see everybody in the chat showing up for lunch break today. And just to go back quickly, talking about a 2-year session, Prop 2 is a great example of what can come about over a 2-year period during these 2-year sessions. So it started as AB 247 last year. We worked it through committee. We worked it through fiscal. We put the floor all the way to the governor's desk. So Prop 2 is a result of a 2-year effort through the 23-24 legislative session. And yeah, for my issue areas, I work on employee relations, I work on governance. And for me, it was a lot about what didn't happen, which was a positive. Of course, I know we want to do a victory lap, as was said, and really just uplift the amazing work that was done by the ACSA advocates, our team, our supports, and the members who helped that all happen. But one of the things I want to mention that didn't happen, and that was an unfortunate outcome, was AB 2725 by Rubio. Regrettably, this was vetoed. It would have allowed school-based occupational therapists and physical therapists the ability to pursue an admin service credential, right? Adding pathways, helping with the pipeline for future education leaders. And the governor, in his veto message, unfortunately said, we're going to create 2 pathways to the CTC. One for those with teaching backgrounds and others without teacher prep backgrounds. So this has widespread implications, lots of questions for current and future credential holders, but never fear. My great colleague, Saret Kaminsky, is all over it. She's already had conversations with the administration. So while not a great outcome, there's hope. The really good news I want to share, again, in the employee relations field, there were 13 really substantive bad bills that would have touched everything from new contracting requirements if you want to provide services through non-in-house employees, extended disability and paid COVID leaves, things like restricting the ability for schools to discipline employees perhaps that have misconduct and really shouldn't be with kids in the classroom or other settings. Just a phenomenal year. And, last year we heard the term hot labor summer. And that is very much not the case this year, with bills not even making it to the governor's desk. I'm not talking about vetoes. These are bills that died on the floor in policy committee and fiscal committee. I'm just really pleased and so thankful for the members that gave us all the great feedback. A little shout out to the HR Council. They're doing really great work and helping complete our One Voice platform priorities.
Dorothy, this job is a little hard here. We have to multitask, and you were saying a lot of important things. I'm not going to lie. I lost my concentration because I saw Jason Engel talk about, is Mario Lopez here? And I almost lost all concentration.
That's Edgar. That's the best thing we will see today, right there. Is
we're not going to let
Iván and Mario Lopez. Sorry, Iván. That's
wait. Can we get back to the more important issue at hand? Yes. No, I'm just kidding. I'm all business. I don't get to do the fun policy. I don't get to do the policy makes you feel good, making sure kids have
No.
food in their, in the schools,
Only the
the
important stuff.
playgrounds.
Yeah.
I'm all business.
Yeah, all
I'm all
business,
about
and we
cutting it out.
appreciate. Hey, Dorothy, and like you said, on a serious note, this year, and I had the pleasure of talking to different groups over the last couple of weeks about this. Like, for all the fights, and I always say this, like that this is part of the gig of ACSA, right? We get in there, you folks, the GR team, we use, like you said, a lot of credit goes to our members who are behind the scenes on all of our advocacy. And while there may be things, the legislature undoubtedly is going to disappoint us. You pointed out a couple of things where, where they did things that maybe we would have wanted differently, but our influence here is not to be overlooked. And I think just the victory you talked about, especially on these HR bills, these are tough forces with us, our labor partners, and they have a lot of influence there. So I think us being able to be that liaison to the policymakers is one of the biggest benefits of ACSA. So long-winded way of saying great job to you, great job to the team on some really noteworthy victories. On that note, we always ask a version of this question, like all this emphasis on the end of session. What's at play? What does that look like? Why are they all big procrastinators and waiting for all this stuff there till the end? What transpired there?
Yeah, so we are up until I think they only went till midnight because they're not constitutionally allowed to go any later than midnight. Second year of a 2-year session. First year, they can go until 5 a.m., however late they want. They can stop the clock. So for us, it's watching floor, waiting for all the governor's action. So I'm on my phone constantly with the governor's updates. They email out anytime there's a signature or a veto. That's happening over the weekends, late at night. And then you get to do your celebratory text with your colleagues, or you're disgruntled. We'll get them next year. But during that month-long process the governor has to sign or veto bills, the second it gets to his desk, we are issuing our best, most convincing argument in writing. Have to put it in writing to the governor's office. We're setting up meetings with his deputy legislative secretaries who are all assigned by issue area. Again, really trying to sell the position to make sure that the governor's action reflects what ACSA wants to happen. And then it's waiting. And this year was especially hard because with a lot of the campaign activities going on, the governor was out of state. So a lot of days of sitting and waiting. So, but again, really great outcomes across the board.
Folks, if you want some feedback, if you have some questions about anything involved with the legislative session for Iván and Dorothy, go ahead and put those in the chat. We'll try and tackle some of those near the end of the show. Iván, this is constant work. In fact, you are meeting with our statewide VPLA's vice presidents for legislative action on Wednesday. You have LPC meetings, our Leg Policy Committee meetings on the books for the rest of the year. From a member engagement lens, what comes next?
Yeah, there's an immediate pivot to the next legislative session. I mean, we all wish, I think, that we could rest up a little bit and celebrate all the success that we had this last legislative session. But it's only a few short months away before we have the ability to sponsor new pieces of legislation where we're going to be reacting to the onslaught of bills that are introduced. So it's critical that we go through an extensive process, particularly in this fall, to make sure we're hearing from our members about what are the top challenges and opportunities that folks are facing in the field. So you cited the vice presidents for legislative action, but there's a whole host of groups, ACSA groups that are coming together throughout the fall. We're in front of regions, we're in front of charters, all the councils meet, and the Legislative Policy Committee meet throughout the fall as well. One plug for our One Voice for Students legislative platform. We're in the process of re-upping that. This is our guiding document, our North Star, so to speak, in terms of where our energy is going to be prioritized. But the importance of us hearing from our members, again, the stories, what's taking place in schools is critical. It's the foundation for everything we do on the advocacy front in terms of how we're prioritizing our work. So that'll take place here throughout the fall and year round.
Dorothy, Iván, we talked a lot about the things that didn't get signed, and we always say half the battle here with ACSA, especially our government relations team, is it's avoiding those things that not becoming law because of as we talked about, especially with so many challenges already on our leaders that affect our kids. It's sometimes just preventing that to get more complex. But the flip side of that, maybe let's talk about what is becoming law. What are the new things? What would you say are the significant pieces that are out there? I'll start with Dorothy.
Yeah, so we are so thrilled. ACSA had 2 co-sponsored bills this year, and I think we've talked about them a little bit with this audience since it was introduced earlier in January. The first is SB 976 by Senator Skinner. This is the one about addictive social media feeds that are constantly getting pushed with notifications to minors. Senator Skinner and the experts, the Surgeon General, even the governor has stated how bad social media is for kids, how disruptive it is, and the emotional and developmental harm it can really create. So this bill, and it would start in 2027, would stop social media platforms from pushing addictive feeds to minors during school and sleeping hours during the school year, unless, of course, parents or guardians want to allow their kiddos to have access to those addictive feeds. The other great news, our other co-sponsor bill, Assembly Bill 1913 by Assemblywoman Addis. This adds a prevention element to those mandated reporter trainings to make sure that if there is an indication of abuse or misconduct, you can see the warning signs before it happens. And so we were just really pleased to work with those 2 offices and get a successful result for our sponsored bills.
Iván?
Yeah, I mean, just picking up on that theme of social media, our folks have been uplifting stories and bringing them to our attention over the course of the past year about harmful posts that are brought to the attention and reported to social media companies, but nothing happens after that. That these posts are not taken down. They continue to have harmful effects on students, on their mental health, on their well-being. SB 1504, which we were a big advocate for, was also signed by the governor. It's going to put more accountability and responsibility on the social media companies to act in an expedited fashion to take down these posts, and if they don't, hold them accountable. One other bill that I'll bring up is fentanyl. We've been talking about that a whole lot. It's gotten a whole lot of attention from the governor, from legislative leadership. We were behind a measure that allows for students 12 and up to carry Narcan on school campuses, really just recognizing that if there is an overdose, that oftentimes a peer is in the best position to act very quickly. And so if this can save one life, then it makes all the effort well worth it. So yeah, that AB 2998 is that measure.
Yeah, and I'll add the great thing about that bill, and again, tip of the hat to Surratt, is it also creates Good Samaritan protection. So a student, the employee, or the school, the employer, can't be held liable if something unfortunately takes place in the course of trying to do your best to try and save someone that might be overdosing.
Dorothy, let me ask this question, because you're right back into the Capitol talking with lawmakers. What are some of the advocacy topics that ACSA will be pushing, that you'll be pushing? And then Terrence Dunn asked this question: what unsigned bills will likely re-up? So there's those 2 questions there. What can you tell us?
Yeah, I'll start with Terrence's question. I'll look into my crystal ball and read my tea leaves. It's always a gamble or a guess, but I think a lot of the bills that our union partners have introduced are going to come back. We haven't talked about AB 2088 yet. That was the McCarty bill that would have required right of first refusal for the most senior person for a classified position. That got vetoed. So great news if you haven't heard already. I think that one's going to come back. We saw it last year, and I know CSEA is a strong champion of this potential change. So I think we will see some 2088 2.0 or junior introduced. And I also think we're going to see the service contract bills come back. The unions are really concerned about schools and other public entities contracting out for services. So trying to put some restrictions, unfortunately, on that. And Naj, I forgot your first question. Could you help me remember your first question?
Advocacy topics that ACSA will be pushing, since you're going right back into the Capitol.
I was just so glad to get a break after the signing period was over. But yes, we are already looking at next year. So, getting feedback from our members, but we're already shopping ideas that will help improve student safety, Also looking at some cleanup language to help our retired annuitants. So a whole host of possible ideas that we are shopping now, because this is when you really have to do your research, dive in, and get started. We're going to have a slate of new members also, so lots of opportunities for ACSA's priorities to sail through.
Iván, one more question for me. I mean, one of the things that, we unabashedly celebrating some of our success, but it's our show, right? So we're allowed to talk about some of the good things that are happening. But I think we say this sincerely, where there's some tough battles out there. And I think the work of our government relations team, the work of our broader organization has enabled us to become that. We've always been an influence here, but I think it's safe to say that just our fingerprint on that place across the street that we're sitting from, we've moved the needle there. What would you say has contributed not only to the success here this year within ACSA, but just generally speaking with our advocacy efforts?
Yeah, a couple of things that I'll uplift is that our governmental relations team is second to none. And so the team's relationships that they have, the reputation they have, they're strategic, their ability to coalition build, all the advocates do an incredible job and work tirelessly with directions that we get from our legislative policy committee and broader membership. But the flip side of that, a critical piece that is necessary for our advocacy success is the voices of our members in really engaging them in this process. So we have Legislative Action Day, which is well known, but many of the things that we're citing here in these last 20 minutes are things that our members came up to Sacramento and lobbied for in a unified behalf. That has impact. There were dozens and dozens of more of our members and districts who signed on to coalition letters. There were many more who made calls to their local legislators and to the governor's office. And we know that this has impact because the legislators and the governor cite these things. They cite these things when they're making public comments on bills and providing rationale for why they're voting for or against something. We saw this play out in the governor's veto messages, where he's literally uplifting language that our members have brought forward. So our members, again, play such a critical role in this, and it's critical to the success that we've seen this past year.
All right. Iván Carrillo, ACSA Senior Director of Policy and Governmental Relations. Dorothy Johnson, ACSA Legislative Advocate. Iván and Dorothy, so great to have you here on the show. We look forward to having you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Folks, you just saw Iván. That gives us an opportunity to talk about the ACSA Podcast Network. 3 different shows for you to enjoy with different types of subject matter. Let's start first with the ACSA Leadership Classroom. This is available on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. The Leadership Classroom, we talk with a leader from an industry outside of public education. They talk about their leadership journey, what they've learned, who they've learned from, and of course, how they identify future leaders. Our current Leadership Classroom guest was Gloria Navarez, the commissioner of the Mountain West Conference, one of 2 Division I female athletic commissioners. You can go ahead and listen to that. It's a great interview, Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. And then, of course, we talked just a few moments ago about Behind the Bills. Iván hosts that. You can get instant updates, very similar to what you get here, but more in-depth. Specifically for our governmental relations and, of course, what's happening inside the state capitol. Iván has that podcast, Behind the Bills. Again, you can get that Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. And, of course, if you don't get to watch the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, you can hear the lunch break as well. Again, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Go ahead and scan those QR codes. And if you like what you see here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, we invite you to like us and subscribe to us. When you do, that's like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. When you do, you'll get instant alerts when we're about to come on the air, as well as a reminder for our regularly scheduled Wednesday broadcasts. And if you have great stories happening in your school communities, we want to tell those stories too. Go ahead and send your press releases, your talking points, your photos to our EdCal editor, Michelle Caro at mcarl@ACSA.org. It gives me an opportunity to remind you folks, we are not on next week. See, we only get Edgar for like a week or so, and then we're off. We've got
I had fun. I was ready to do this every week now.
It's amazing that you're ready to do this every week.
I'm motivated now, but I guess we're off next week.
Yes, we are off next week, but then we are going to take you through Election Day with a number of brand new shows. So go ahead and mark your calendars for the Wednesday after next Wednesday. Edgar, good having you back here today. We look forward to having you back on our show.
We're gonna make this happen, Naj. I'm motivated now. Love being back in the mix here. So hopefully everybody has a good week here. Everybody stay cool as we deal with this heat wave, and we'll see everybody soon.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, folks, so much for joining us here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Reminder, we are live and interactive Wednesdays here on ACSA Facebook and ACSA YouTube. Have a great rest of the day and rest of the week, and we'll see you next time.